it's going to take an effort at every single level, from individuals with your friends and family all the way through to probably the Supreme Court and federal legislation, etc. Karlyn, you're working and have worked with schools and independent schools and professional development programs and individual teachers and such. Have you seen on the inside people looking for guidance, looking to make changes, who are horrified or appalled at this? Or is education, generally speaking, pretty well infected?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that education, generally speaking, is pretty well infected. But in every system I've been in, there have also been people who are looking at it and saying, this is not quite right. This doesn't pass the smell test. And I think a case that we can look at very clearly is the case of Jody Shaw from Smith College, who is actively suing Smith College for creating a hostile work environment against white people over the last couple of years. And, if you talk to Jody, you know that there are many other people at Smith College, which is an extremely liberal place, that agree with her, that are not okay with the ideals that the college has been putting forward. And this has been consistently my experience. Most of my experience comes from the world of higher education. And so, but I can tell you, there are people at every single college that I've talked to that are uncomfortable with what's going on. And frankly, they're afraid to speak out because they think that they're going to lose their jobs. So I think there's very much something to be said about, finding your people within these organizations, making sure you're connecting with each other, making sure you're building those networks of social support so that you can feel like you're not alone, because it can be very easy for people in these situations to feel like they're crazy when everyone around them is suddenly using these different words and, is supporting this ideology and is going to these trainings and is confessing that they're racist, but you're not crazy. What is going on around you is crazy. And it's going to take the courage of very good people to speak up and say, you know what? I believe in equality of opportunity for everyone. I believe that everyone, regardless of race or gender or whatever else, should have access to a quality education, to opportunities in the world. But we do not fight racism by creating more racism.
Indeed, very well said. And unfortunately, guys like me, Gen X, raised to not see color, raised to not see gender, be colorblind, do all these things. I feel like I gouged my eyes out, and now everybody's mad at me because I'm blind. And it's a really tough spot to be in. It's like, I don't want to sit here and talk about race.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about racism. I don't want to talk about black people and white people. I want to talk about Americans. I want to talk about American ideas. So I have some bitterness building up in me over all this crap, because we're going backwards. Does everybody, when they get to their 40s, do they think that we're going backwards every generation? Is that how it works? Are we just the new version of the get off my lawn folks? Or is this we're truly at an inflection point of regression? Anybody?
I think we're truly regressing. Absolutely. I'm about to turn 40 in a couple of weeks, and I never actually thought that in my 40s I would be fighting against racism. I was like, this was solved. I mean, maybe not solved, because there's still conversations that we need to have about race in this country, but we've made so much progress since the founding of this country. And the whole idea of America is about being a more perfect union. We're never going to get to a place of perfection, and racism is always going to exist in some small way in this country. That's what happens when you have a free country. People can believe crazy things, but we are so lucky that the actual KKK is only like 3,000 people now, which even the Anti-Defamation League will tell you that. So we have beaten back racism in this country, and now they're trying to bring it back.
Chris, an actual point of regression, or us just getting old?
Well, I think it's important to separate the abstract from the concrete. And I always think in my work, where I'm in this abstract world of media and politics and intellect, I'm dealing with all of these horrific stories, and it's very easy to think, oh, this is a kind of woke revolution. It seized control of our institutions. And I think that in a certain regard, that's true. But then I also remember, I think of my neighbors, right? In my little neighborhood, it's more than half, it's a middle-class neighborhood. More than half of the families are racial and ethnic minorities. About a third are immigrants. And then my day-to-day real-world interactions are are fantastic. They're phenomenal. They're great. People are coming together around a common cause. People with a huge variety of backgrounds that are getting along and working together with each other. And truly, I think don't engage each other as racial categories, but as, oh, my neighbor over there or my neighbor over here. And so I do wonder if we are creating, in some sense, a politics of abstraction where our institutions are actually failing, moving backwards, imploding, radicalizing. But the actual ballast of the most American people in their day-to-day real lives is actually making tremendous progress, huge progress. And this separation is something that I think we need to really think about and really grapple with, because I think our society is less racist than ever. But our elite institutions are now more racist than they were before. And this is something that I think we need to combat at the institutional level, while recognizing that at heart, fundamentally, in your daily lives, you engage with people of many different backgrounds in a way that is almost surpassed these old racial notions and hostilities that used to be so prevalent.
Very, very well said, Chris. Corey, let's bring us out here. We're wrapping up. Actual point of regression, or am I just getting old? Didn't mean to drag you guys into your 40s there, by the way.
I'm not 40 yet, but
congratulations.
There is something to the notion of things getting worse over time from a libertarian perspective. If we look at overall government overreach, over time, governments tend to get bigger over time. But when we're looking at one particular piece of the puzzle, which is decentralization of education, I think we're actually moving in the right direction, particularly in the past year with all the things I talked about earlier, with families figuring out finally that there's no good reason to fund closed institutions when we can fund students directly instead. And a lot of this, again, has to do with the fact that the teachers' unions have essentially been providing free advertising for school choice over the past year. So while there's a lot of things to be upset about, there's one glimmer of hope, and that one of the perhaps only silver linings of the past year is that perhaps we'll see more educational freedom going forward, because a light switch went off in the heads of millions of families this year, because they've been essentially powerless with the K-12 public school system for so long. And this year has really put a spotlight on that power imbalance. And I think families don't want to feel like that ever again. So they're going to push really hard to be able to have the right to take their children's education dollars to wherever they're getting an education.
Aside from the sad and tragic casualties, real life casualties of coronavirus, the biggest losers of all have been the teachers' unions, I believe. The teachers' unions have taken it right in the face. They've been exposed to be outrageous and anti-child, anti-work. They don't see themselves as being essential workers anymore. And now with the CDC announcing that a 3-foot social distancing guideline is sufficient for schools is absolutely insane. If anybody sat closer than 3 feet away from me anyway, I'm telling you to move, sir. Personal distance, my personal space, do not violate it. I hope the kids will be back in school. I just got a notice that my kids are going to be able to sign up for spring athletics. Yes. So that is awesome. It's a struggle for me. I'd be homeschooling my kids in a blink if I had that choice. Unfortunately, it's not there. So I continue to push these fights on behalf of my kids and for everyone else out there.